Welcome to another video, guys. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about Sustech Pro 4C. It's a management system that's designed and created here in South Africa. A lot of guys out there are currently using it. I know it's also used abroad by a lot of guys. So um, I'm going to just run you down through some of the features and all the stuff that's on the software on the interface side, and just to give you a little bit of a broader understanding about the management unit itself. Just to a small disclaimer for you guys that this video is not sponsored by anyone, and whatever is spoken about in this video is purely based on our experience and our knowledge on playing with this specific ECU over the last couple of years, and is by no means giving advice to anyone. If you're unsure about something, it's advisable to seek professional advice. So just an understanding this is a very, very good management. Before I dive and get into the video, I just want to give you my honest and personal opinion. I changed over to this management on my personal race car about 2 years or so ago, and it's an exceptional management. I can tell you that without a doubt. You know, they have really taken pride in it. They've taken care. They've given it really, really careful consideration as to what's needed and what the South African market that has been crying out for a long time for. There are some really good managements other than Sustech that's out there that's been tried and tested over the years and still doing very, very well. But this is by no means comparing managements. It is just giving an illustration of what the specific unit can do and what it can offer for the guys out there. So I know the big question is, and a lot of guys are going to ask about this, is it any better than any other management? I would say yes and no. It has some definitive, yes, distinctive differences, and we've wired a lot of them up, and we've seen significant changes to the car depending on how it's wired up. If you're wiring it up for batch firing, you're probably not going to see the gains that you can, or you're not utilizing the full potential of the management system. But if you wire for fully sequential, my honest opinion, I can almost guarantee and say there is going to be a different increase in power. We've seen it in over, I think we've done over 12, 15 of them. My personal car previously was on, I think 174, 175 kilowatt. Just with the ECU swap, we jumped over to about 191 somewhat kilowatt. So we made about 16, 17 kilowatt just with the management change. That's obviously going from batch firing to fully sequential. So yes, it's very affordable. It's priced right, and the nice thing about it is, on the interface on the software side, you can basically set up the management based on the application of the car. So you don't need a specific management to run that type of engine. The software, the way it's designed, you can obviously change it on the software side, whether you want it to run a 36-1, 60-2 setup, your distributor, whether it's 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder, etc. So yeah, we're gonna get into this video and we're gonna run into it. So hope you guys enjoyed and hope this is informative. Hope it helps somebody out there. As you guys are aware, we are trying to grow our YouTube channel. If you haven't already subscribed or followed our channel, please consider giving us a like, and we're going to try to be bringing you more and more informative videos, what goes on in a dyno shop, in a performance shop. So if you guys haven't already known, I'm Shailen Gavada from Auto Power Tuning and Service Center down here in KZN. We are a 5-star graded out of my workshop that deals with all types of work, whether it's your day-to-day services, mechatronics, clutches, DSG boxes, servicing, performance build, dyno tuning. We basically cater for most parts of the South African market in the automotive industry. So enjoy this video. If you guys are, if there's certain things that I haven't covered and you're not sure about, and if you wanna get more information, you're welcome to drop us a comment there, or you can get in touch with us at our shop. You can Google our number, or you can get it off our website, which is www.autopowertuning.co.za. So we're gonna get into the nuts and bolts of this video. Hope you enjoyed. Hope it helped somebody out there, like I mentioned earlier. And yeah, let's see what's it all about and how it can help you guys out there. Take care. So yeah, let's dive into this. Let's have a look at what it is capable of doing. So just to give you a rundown of what's going to happen. So I'm going to show you the interface side of the management. Some of the features, some of the benefits that's there, how some of the maps work from your ignition, from your timing, how to do the basic setup on it, etc. Those kind of things. And yeah, it's just to obviously give you an understanding, a very broad or general understanding rather of what the interface is all about. So I know some guys they're unsure about it and get a lot of calls asking for assistance. So we don't have a problem with that. So I said it might be better to just drop a video, and you guys can obviously watch this and go back and look at it again if you're not sure about something. So the first thing that we're going to go into is the management system. So when you download this from the website, from www.Sustech Pro, it's gonna, before this page here, it's gonna ask you to it's gonna come up here in the center. I don't know if you guys can see this mouse. It's gonna come up with a code, so you're gonna need a code. So you're gonna need to take a screenshot of that code, and then you're gonna need to send that information to Sustech with that digits, and then they'll send you a code back to unlock the software. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get into the interface here like what you're seeing. So that's the first step. So you've got to take that code that once you open the software, it's going to give you some lot of numbers. You copy the numbers, you send it to them. They're going to send you back the unlock code. You put it in there, and then it's going to open up the software for you. So I'm just going to work in offline mode because obviously I'm on desktop. It's not connected to any car. Yeah, so now I'm offline. So obviously now you can see all the tabs are illuminated. It's going to allow me to go through all those tabs. All right. So this is your data page. It's more for tuning. It's basically an overview of everything that's happening. So once your car is set up and everything is working the way it should, this just gives you a more broader scope of what's going on. You can look at engine RPM when the car's idling. It'll tell you your milliseconds at that specific RPM, the duty cycle, which is very, very important. Yeah, we're going to come back to this a little bit later on this video, but this is one of the main benefits why I love this unit, is because you have the ability to look at air fuel ratio, which is critical to any type of car out there. So this is something that's very, 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 very nice that's out there. This here is just general water temperature. It's looking at the temperature of your coolant. If you wire up for air temp, it's going to give you a temperature. This is another very, very critical one. It's looking at battery voltage. So even here, a lot of times if your management is not wired up correctly, or you're not using the correct earths or taking body earths from the car, etc., you might be getting, example, 13.8 volts at your battery or at your starter or at your alternator, but the management is only seeing like 12 volts, etc. So it's always important to look at the wiring. If your voltage at your battery is differing to what's here on the software, you should stop right there and investigate as to why you're having a variance in voltage. This is for obviously boost. You can see what sort of boost the car is going up to if it's a turbocharged application. This is the timing to see your different timing degrees here. And this will be obviously TPS, that's abbreviation for throttle position sensor. It's just the angle of where your throttle or your foot is based on the travel of the pedal. And this is obviously idle percentage. Yeah, so you've got some other little cool information down here. If I'm not mistaken, ECU processor, the load percentage, this is how much you are demanding from the processor, the internals of the ECU, how hard it's working rather. And here you can see, I've never seen this on a lot of management. I think this is like the first, or maybe stand to be corrected. Let me know in the comments if that's the fact. This is your ECU temperature. You're talking about the temperature of the ECU. In down here, you got upload timer enabled. I'm not 100% sure what that is for. It's this management system, by the way. I see Graham and his team, they've always improving on it and adding a lot of new features to the software. So I don't know if that's future plans. They're adding this. I haven't really spoken to them, but yeah, see, there's a lot of new things that's added on. But we're just going to run through what we know and what we've understand so far. So that's going to tell you the fuel map you have. We're going to dig deeper into this a little bit later on in the video. Your boost limiter, then you got fuel pump, not assigned, GP3. So this is all obviously what's assigned to your GPOs, etc. and GPIs. Right, so we're going to come back to this little section down here a little later on. Right. So next tab we look at is the help tab. So down here, this is where you're going to find all the information regarding the shortcut keys as to how to navigate through the management. So if you look closely, let's start here. So you see fuel map. The F is in capital letter and it's got an underscore. There it's an underscore. Here the the I has an underscore. Here the T has an underscore. Here again T, and here C. So what it's telling you is if you press C, it's going to take you to compensation tab. If you press M, it'll take you to the main tab. If you press S, it's going to take you to center. So it's just basically shortcuts to help you to navigate through the interface, more efficiently and more smoothly. So you can run through this. It's pretty much straightforward. I really like that they added all this information in here. And then also down here, I see there's a new one that's added. It's a double tap of the space bar. It's obviously more for the tuners out there. When you're tuning the car, if you had a specific load cell and you need your cursor to go there, instead of pressing N or P, you just double tap the space bar. It's going to take you straight to the load cell where you need to tune. Right, so yeah, you guys can obviously read through this. It's pretty much straightforward. It's nothing too difficult to understand there. So next one is sensor. I think we should go do main setup first. Okay, let's do main setup first. So main setup first, pretty much straightforward. So depending on the engine setup, whether it's 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder, you're gonna run through this. So we're gonna just do one for the purposes of this video as a demonstration. So we're gonna say we're dealing with a 4-cylinder engine, right? And depending now how you want to, what sort of setup you're running, right? So I'm going to use my specific car as an example, which is a 2-liter 20 valve. We wired for fully sequential. So we would click that. So immediately when you click sequential, you're going to need a home position. Like down here, see it's highlighted in red. So that's to tell the management exactly where the cams is and when to obviously fire the injectors. Otherwise, if you don't have no home position hooked up, it's not going to work. It's going to misfire. It's going to do all funny kind of things to you. So that's very, very important to make sure when you're wiring for sequential, or if you haven't done one like that before, you can speak to Sustech directly. They're very, very helpful people. They will obviously give you guidance, or you can contact us and we'll obviously as well try to assist you the best we can. But we're going to come back to this in a moment now. So we're going to say sequential. You have the opportunity now to choose your injector impedance, which is either low, medium, high, depending on your injector. So we're going to go to medium. So here we're under fuel map selection. So there's a pretty cool thing that I really like. I haven't used it yet on my personal cars, but it's there to be used. So what it's telling us is, let's just click here. Just give me a second. Okay, so it's gonna say ECU selected, or you're gonna say map 1, only map 2. So remember, it says only map 1, only map 2, right? So if you click ECU selected, you're gonna need to wire a toggle switch from the ECU to a button on the dash, a toggle button. So that toggle button is going to switch you between map 1 and map 2. Now what it does is, so let's just talk about this while we're here. So let's just say you wire up a toggle button for map 1, map 2. So now we're going to switch to map 1, which is here. So obviously there's no information here now, but we'll run through that. And then map 2. So if you go to on your toggle switch or position 1, that can be for map 1. The tuner tunes the car, let's just say on pump fuel or a tune that's for more economical to save fuel, you can use map 1. Now, whilst the car is on the dyno, you can do a second tune, which is under map 2 now, which can be a more aggressive map, maybe more timing, a little bit more for if you want to get maximum output of the car, and it's definitely going to use more fuel. So you have the ability to switch between map 1 and map 2. So once a tuner is done tuning with the car, you can flip the toggle switch to map 1. It's going to give you sort of eco kind of driving if it's tuned for that, or if you need a little bit more power out of it, and you flip your toggle switch to map 2, which is going to be the more aggressive map. So this doesn't necessarily mean you only can use it for eco or for fuel consumption or those kind of things. Like we use them like map 1 for pump fuel, map 2 and on a racer car we put methanol. We already have our map that's loaded in there, and it's going to save up tons and tons of time and money obviously on the dyno and getting it retuned all over again. So that is one of the very important and nice things that I found about this management route. We're going to go back to main setup. I'm going to show you now. So that's basically what happens here. Now if you click only map 1, you're only going to be able to tune on map 1. If you click map 2, you're only going to be able to tune on map 2. So bear that in mind. So when you're wiring up the car, we always like to, if you don't want to use it at the same time, we like to send the wires and get this pre-installed. So at some point, if you want to use it, the option is there and it is available. All right. The next thing you're going to see on the interface is rev limiter for map 1. So that's going to allow you to set the limiter for map 1. That's going to allow you to set the limiter for map 2. Alright, so then you can obviously set the limiter to cut. So you can either cut fuel or you can cut spark, or if you want to cut both, you can cut both. So we generally like to cut the spark. This keeps the engine a little bit on the safe side. If you cut fuel, you can get that done. That creates more of the pops and bangs, but obviously it builds up a lot of heat and so on. So we leave that on spark. This is your start prime, the amount of milliseconds the injector sprays in, and this is your map sensor. So we obviously run 4 bar, and this is your maps sensor scaling. We're going to leave that onto 4 bar. So this is important. It's more for tuners. We always enable altitude compensation. If you tune the car and then you click this after that, you're going to end up with problems. So we like to get that done first. Then load sensing it's obviously map based or TPS. We're going to say it's TPS. And then throttle pump, obviously TPS. So if you are turbocharged and if you are using map, then you go map. But if you are aspirated and or even if you wired up for TPS, you gotta have this clicked on. So TPS on, and then you'll be able to calibrate TPS on this sensor setup page. But we'll get back to that shortly. Alright, then ignition setup. So just to take you back, a refresh, or let's just recap on what we went through here. So remember now, as I explained to you guys, there, this little section, we said we are going for sequential. So remember it highlighted in red here. So spark mode and sequential, we are running coil-per-cylinder. So coil-per-cylinder, and you can obviously set your dual control. We're going to say constant charge time, and then you can set your charge time. This is to fire your coil. So RPM trigger pattern, we are running a 60 - 2, and the sensor type. So depending on what sensor, or this sensor type, depending on what crane sensor you're running, it's either Hall or magnetic Hall. This little tab, we'll come back to it. Something that's very, very interesting that they added onto it. But by default, it's always set to 0.31 voltage. All right, we'll come back to this. So while you're doing sensor setup, the car is idling, and if you're doing timing, etc., you'll be able to see your RPM here on this little tab here. Right, next thing, this is to calibrate your timing, to get timing on the vehicle. So obviously trigger tooth, and then you've got trigger angle. Now this is important, very, very important. I'm going to show you, take it up to 25. So depending on the 60, on this setup that you have. So this is to get timing, to calibrate your timing. So if we are running a 60 - 2 trigger wheel, right? Every one that you change this by, it changes the angle of your trigger by 6 degrees. So if we go up to 10, we are changing it to, it's not actually 10, it's actually 60 degrees, right? So this is just to get your timing close enough, and then you use your trigger angle with your timing light to get the timing calibrated. So we generally like to get it close to around 45 to 50 degrees. So it's obviously giving us enough of room on our ignition maps to get enough timing. We're never going to run that high timing, but yeah. So depending on the car and the setup, like a lot of the Toyotas, you'll probably be around 13, 14 on the trigger tooth, right? On the trigger tooth, and then obviously use your angle to basically get the timing calibrated. Now, to get timing calibrated, another very, very interesting thing that they added on. So we found the easiest way, you just say lock timing here. You can set it either to 0, or you can set it at 10 degrees, and then you look at your timing light in the front. If your timing light is obviously, let's just say it's reading 14 degrees. So obviously you've got to adjust your trigger angle here to obviously get it to read exactly where the timing is locked. So if you want to lock it at 10 or 5 or 0 or even 20, the software is going to get that done for you. And once you're done, you can just uncheck that box, and then it's going to be back to the timing based on what the ignition maps are there. Right, so back to this page. Now, remember I said when we are aiming for sequential, it lit up red here, it lit up red here. So home position is very, very important. If you don't have a home position wired up for sequential, it's not going to allow you to get the car started up. It's going to do all funny things. It's going to misfire, backfire. You're going to think something is obviously not right, but you've got to have this. So this is the one that we use, 1 pulse on cam, 1 pulse per cam rotation at 720 degrees. So you've got to have cam sensor there. So for example, my setup is a 2-liter 20 valve, same like a 1.8T. So on your cam, things on the intake side, you'll see there's a cam sensor. So to get that sensor calibrated to the right position, I'll try and put that up towards the end of the video. You basically got to create a window for it, and it's got to be between, I think it was about 15 to 30 somewhat degrees from the actual sensor. But I think we're gonna do that on another video, or possibly towards the end of this video. I'll try and find the information before we end this video, so you'll know where to position your cam sensor or how to cut the window for it. So we obviously modify ours and it works wonderfully. So even here, depending on the sensor type, it's either Hall or magnetic, and then obviously you can adjust voltage, but we'll also get back to that a little bit later on. So yeah, this is more for the tuners out there, or even if you're doing a startup map and then taking it to a dyno, you got to look at this. So yeah, I just want to show you, if I click 700, see the spacing is 750 RPM spacing, and it's going to give you 7,000 RPM, right? So we go to fuel map. See, it took me up here, 7,000 RPM, and this is what they're talking about, the spacing, right? Now we go back to main setup. If we say 900 RPM spacing at 8,200 RPM, look at what it does now. Changes our spacing, and it's giving us 8,200 RPM, and so on. It just creates a bigger map. So obviously, if you're revving a car to 9,000 RPM, you wouldn't want to be using or getting the car tuned on an 8,200 RPM, because the ECU is only going to take you up to, the software is only going to read up to 8,200, and beyond that, you're not going to be able to tune. All it's going to do is it's going to follow the last block up here. So whatever the fueling was set here, the ignition timing was set here, it's going to continue with that as it goes beyond that point. So these are more for the tuners, obviously, when they doing the setup. And if you're revving at 10,000 RPM, that's what it would look like there. So just want to show you something else here, and then you can set your load sites. How many load sites? So now you see what it's done. It's created more and more blocks. So what it does by doing this, you end up with a more refined tune. It's not necessary for all types of cars. It depends on the car and on the setup. A lot of guys will be seeing this one out there most of the time because it's the most basic one that's done. Let's just change this one back to 7,000. You see, you'll look at it something like this. So obviously on some cars where you need to get it really, really refined and you want to get more of a smoother tune, then you change that setting, and then it gives you obviously more load sides to tune the car on both your fuel maps there. And so yeah, if you guys have any questions, you can get into the comments, drop me a comment, and then we'll try to assist you. So you can do the same. You see, that's your fuel map, that's the ignition side. So if we say 6 for ignition side, this is what it's going to do for your ignition map. And if we say 5 load sides, it's obviously going to downsize the tuning table for us. Alright, so that's pretty much what's going on with getting the setup. Now just to recap what happened here. We set this engine that we're dealing with as an example. It's a 20 valve normally aspirated, or even a 1.8T. We got it wired for sequential. It's a 4-cylinder. Injector, we chose medium. We went for map 1. We obviously set RPM limiter 1, RPM limiter 2. We decided to cut spark. We got our start time there. And then we are enable altitude compensation. Our load sensing, we said we are TPS based using throttle position sensor. and for our throttle pump also throttle pump based as well. So if you guys recall, when I said it was sequential, it highlighted our spark mode in red and it highlighted our home position in red, because the software is telling us that those two need to be correctly set up on the vehicle and set up on the software. See what happens? It goes back to red as soon as I change it to something else. So that's where it wants, that's the one that it needs to be. And then yeah, down here was obviously how to calibrate your timing and to get timing sorted out of the vehicle. And home position, same types of sensors, etc. So that's, yeah, basically that's what's going on with this. So we're going to go to the next sensor setup. So once all that's done, you can calibrate TPS. So obviously you leave foot off the pedal and then you say saved closed throttle, and you say foot flat on the pedal and you say save full throttle. It's not going to give us information up because, as I said, I'm not connected to any car. You'll see this will go up when you press it to somewhere there, and then you say accept values and then you're done. Now, to know that, how to know your TPS is calibrated and is in the right spot, you go back to your data page. You see down here you have a little crosshair and with a little red dot there, this is our tuning dot. So if your dot is sitting somewhere there or there or there or there, wherever in this black section, it means your TPS is not calibrated properly. So you need to go back to sensor setup, you recalibrate TPS, you go back to data page, it should be more or less sitting on the center there. Then you know you're spot on and you're in the right place and that's done correctly. Obviously, if it doesn't line up there, then obviously there's something going on that's causing you to do that, and you've got to dig further and look further as to what's going on down there. Right, next one, water temperature sensor. Very, very important. Before even tuning the car, you know, a lot of times I see this getting done last or forgotten about. You got to calibrate water temperature sensor, because I'm going to take one as an example. Let's just take this one for example. Because without water temperature sensor, the ECU is going to give you, or it's not going to be able to see the correct temperature down here, right? Now, when it doesn't see the correct temperature, what happens is, or if it's incorrect temperature that's calibrated, for example, if the car may be a running temperature, let's just call it 90 degrees, and if you don't have the sensor set up or your water temperature sensor calibrated properly, the ECU might see the car, you know, at 40 degrees temperature, and at 40 degrees temperature you might be still in cold start. So what's going to happen is it's going to be throwing fuel in based on how the cold start is set up. So very important to get this calibrated to make sure that the temperature that you're getting on the car versus the temperature that's on the software are more or less close to each other. So if you're getting like 90 on the car or 95, if the software is about 92 or 93, you're close enough. You should be good. So keep that in mind. And the nice thing about it, depending on the sensor that you're using, there's already a lot of sensors that's calibrated into the system. You can click the closest one, and as you change this, you'll see live, it'll tell you the actual temperature. So if your car is sitting at 90 degrees temperature, and let's say you click VR6, use the VR6 drop down, and let's just say it's 70 degrees, and you know you're still far off. If you click MPA1 one wire, and now you're at 88 degrees, you're close enough. Because the actuals changes based on the sensor that you type. If you're not sure about it, you can also go in and, you know, read up on this, and that will be able to assist you further, or you can physically go and calibrate each section yourself. That's what we normally do to get it more or less dead on. So to do this, you just go bottom arrow, up arrow, Remember, it's dealing with homes, and then you can use left or right to change the homes. But you got to do it at each and every temperature, so it's a long process. Then, as you see. Alright, so that's pretty much straightforward. So trigger edge, depending on the setup you're using, this needs to be done properly, otherwise you're not going to be able to get timing properly. The car's going to be all upside down. So spark, falling, you'll see that a lot of the things they put there is user friendly as well. Right, and it tells you your chargers with 12 volt, chargers with ground. So depending how the car is wired, you're going to follow this illustration, otherwise you're not going to get correct spark. So water temperature sensor we spoke about, air temperature sensor we spoke about, we're going to speak about, but it's basically the exact same thing as the water temperature. It's going to do the same thing. You're going to look at the actual ambient temperature around your sensor versus what's showing on the software. That's if you have an air temperature sensor wired up. Right, so that basically covers our sensor setup page. So we've done main setup, sensor setup, we went to help, we went to data page, file options, we haven't been here. Okay, so if you want to make the actual software a little bit bigger on your laptop, you would come through program scale, and then you can go down, you can go up, vice versa. Yeah, that's just to change the size of the interface. And I like this one. So why not giving down there? This is right. It's not allowing me to change, but there's a drop down here with the air fuel ratio readout. We're going to get to some of the nuts and bolts and the very interesting stuff of this management shortly. So normally you would get the type of fuel that you're running in a car, you click it, and it's obviously going to convert that for you into the system. So you can run through all these other settings, a lot of settings here. You've got RPM smoothing, map smoothing, air fuel ratio smoothing. You can reset your management. You can click here if you want to work offline, if you're not plugged into the car, like what I'm doing right now. And then also you gotta make sure when you plug in for the first time, depending what COM port you're using on your laptop, you gotta look at the COM port here that matches up to the software. So if you're not getting comms, or if you're not able to connect to the car, you're gonna be able to either change it on your laptop side, or you can try and change it here from the software side. This is how many samples it takes per second. So 20 seconds, I think, is the default. So what it's telling you, it's how many samples the ECU is going to take per second. Obviously, the more samples, the more you demand from the ECU and the processor. So I think 25 is ample enough. If you feel that you need more samples, then obviously samples is basically the data that's coming through and filtering through the information. Through the software rather. Anything else? Let me just have a look. You can obviously, to save your map to your computer, you say save. Obviously, there's nothing here. Or if you want to load a map from the ECU, let's just click here. If you want to load a map into the ECU, we say load map into ECU. We're going to click there. This operation will change all the units. So are you sure you want to do that? Yes, we want to do that. And there you go. Just a couple of seconds and she's in. And I see there's a set password here. We haven't used this before, but I think you can lock the ECU by putting in a password. I think that's more for the tuners, etc. So I put map into ECU. Now I'm going to show you what it did. Remember, we loaded a map into this. So let's reload a map into the ECU. Say that. Say OK. Download the map. So it's going to take you here. So see what it says here. In use. That's fuel map 1. Fuel map 2, if I click, it's not in use because this car is not wired for it. Okay, so I want to show you guys something very, very important. And I know most of the tuners might know this, but when you wire up for fully sequential on your fueling, you can see at 8,200 RPM, we are 10 milliseconds. But when you wire up for sequential, if you're batch firing, example, on some of the other managements, this would already be way over, and you're basically injector wide open. So this is only about 50-60% of the injector being open. So if I change this number, just want to show you. You can see it takes us to about 14.4. So we still got enough injector there, because it doesn't stop at 8-9 milliseconds like some of the other ECUs out there. So that's just to also to bear that in mind. So this is the actual fuel map for my car. You can see, as I explained to you guys earlier, we are using the 8,200 RPM. We are revving the car a little bit beyond that. So what is happening is it's copying this block beyond this point. So if we had 8.3 or 8.4, 8.5 up here, it would just use whatever was on the last block and it will copy it over on the fuel map and together with the ignition map. That's here. So this is the ignition map. Yeah, so that's basically fuel maps, how it works. Now we're gonna go to compensation, because we did speak about this. Now, as I mentioned to you guys earlier about sensor setup, water temperature sensor setup. This is very, very important under sensor setup. You gotta get this calibrated to the car. So if the car is 90, to recap, actual temperature must be close to 90. So when you're doing compensation setup, you're doing your cold start setup, you can see at 40 degrees temperature, we are allowing a 15.6% injection of fuel. Likewise, at 20 degrees, 0 degrees, we're probably never going to get down there. So if your car sensor is not reading correctly, or if you haven't calibrated it correctly, like I mentioned to you guys earlier, if the car is at running temperature and the ECU is seeing it at 20 or 40 degrees temperature, it's going to overfuel the car. I think something's wrong with the tune. It's because what has happened is the ECU is sensing that it's cold, and it's putting the cold start on, which is this section here. So bear that in mind. So when you're setting up cold start, it takes a little bit of getting used to. You've got to obviously give it a few attempts and see each day. When the car is super cold in the mornings, you've got to adjust this and refine it each and every day to get it to the actual sweet spot. So when we generally tune a car, and if a customer has issues with cold start, and they say cold start is not good, we always recommend for them to leave the car with us overnight, and we come and set it the next day with come back to the software, and then we set it up with our machinery and our tooling that we have to get this done, and it's pretty spot on from that point onwards. All right. Here is another important section. So battery voltage compensation. So it's just giving it compensation, or when they talk about compensation, you can see here, MS is an abbreviation for milliseconds added. So at 14 volts charge rate, you can see we've got 0 compensation, or 0 milliseconds added. At 13, we're giving it 0.08. At 12 volts, 0.180. So what it's doing essentially is, if the car dips to, let's just say, 12 volts charge rate, the ECU is going to see that, and it's going to add 0.18 milliseconds of fuel. And generally what happens here, if you put your aircon on, or if the fan kicks in from 14s or 13s, it will obviously dip in voltage. So when voltage does dip, it obviously changes fuel pressure slightly. So that is why we ask the injector to throw a little bit more fuel in, just to give it that smooth transition from when the fan or any equipment that kicks in that drops voltage. It's just a transition from demanding extra voltage from the vehicle. So throttle pump compensation, beautiful thing that's here. So this basically is, what it does is, if you have how can I explain it? The easiest way to explain this, let's just say you're on idle and you give the car a quick throttle acceleration, like a blip, and if it starves, or if you find like it's not clean there, so what this does is, you can increase how much of fuel to add in that quick blip. So it's just a quick injection of fuel for that burst of the throttle of the quick change of the throttle. So what I mean by that is, as soon as you press the throttle, like a quick acceleration, like a pump in and out, obviously the ECU will see that, and then just to give it that smooth transition or that clean rev up, you will use these settings here to clean that up. So that's just like sometimes when you got a gargle, or if it doesn't rev up clean in between gear changes, this is the settings that you would need to use. So I'm not going to go into detail of this because it's a little tricky to understand it. But yeah, you got to play around with these here, and that will fix that issue for you. Right, so that's condensation, and then water temperature, air temperature condensation, basically the same thing. I'm not going to run through this too much. A lot of guys don't run this, but it's nice to have this. But it's the same thing. It's condensation at different air temperatures, same as water. But yeah, we don't really play much with these things with the setting here. Right, so inputs and outputs is left, I think. Yeah, so inputs is basically it's the abbreviation for this called GPI1. So GPI1, you can see here, general purpose inputs. There are 3 of them: GPI1, GPI2, GPI3. And it tells you each GPI1 on the software, it actually gives you the color illustration. So the wire color is a green with a black stripe. So it's a green wire, black stripe. GPI2 is a green wire with a red stripe. GPI function 3 is a green with a blue stripe, as we see there. So let's just run through this briefly. So here you see you've got the drop down. Click the drop down. You can say add launch anti-lag. What this is basically is your launch control. So you can set your RPM. You can set how much ignition retard, how much you want to pull away, and how much of percentage of fuel you want to add when it is in launch control mode. So if you're on the dyno, if you're testing it and you're looking at the software, as soon as it's activated, you will see it will come up active up here. Then you got your boost control override. We're gonna enable that, and then you're gonna be able to adjust it. So you can cut how much of boost you want to add or take away as a percentage. Right, so that's your launch control. The next one is fuel map 2. So like I mentioned to you guys earlier, see what it says? Fuel map 2 selector switch. So if you wired up a selector switch, you're going to need to come up here to your GPI inputs, and you're going to have to enable it, right, as one of the GPI functions, depending on which color you use to wire it up. So if you mixed up with the polarity on your wiring, you can also invert it here, so you don't have to go back to the wiring and change it around. So you can change it on the software as well. Right, so boost setting. So that's just your boost setting pot or switch. Spinning multimeter. This is a the infamous multimeter. I see there's 4 set points here now. I think previously there was 3. I think I added a 4th. So what this does is, and I'm going to explain this a little bit more into detail because a lot of guys use this and we've done a lot of them. So what it does is basically, if you wire up spinning multimeter, it's like a launch control button pattern, right? You press and hold your button, it's going to come up active here. So what it's going to do is, whilst holding the button, remember that, it's going to take the car up to 4,000 RPM and it's going to hold it there for 1 second. After 1 second, it's going to skip to the next point. Let's change this to 4,500. So from 4,000, it's going to go to 4,500. It's going to hold it there for 1 second. It's going to skip to the next point. Let's say that to 5,000. And it's going to hold there for one second. And then it's going to jump to the 4th point rather, which is another 1 second. So that's what it does. It just gives it a smooth transition between RPMs. It's a spinning multimeter limiter. A lot of guys use this for building up boost as well. So you can even change the duration, how long you want it to hold at each RPM point. So if you want to set it at 4000 to hold at 2 seconds before it jumps to the next one, you can do that. If you want to delay it at RPM point 2 at 3 seconds, you can change it there. You can use a slider obviously to change it to the different timeline that you want it to hold at each point. So you can go up to 12 seconds as you see there in the picture. Okay, so next one we have warning light OBD. This is a nice one. So remember, you got 3 functions, so you got to choose the 3 important ones that you're gonna be using here. So it's not obviously giving us this now because obviously I'm inactive, but you can wire up a warning light to the ECU, and I'll show you in a moment what it's going to do. But this is my favorite, and this is what we cannot do without. So you can wire up. One of the main benefits of this ECU is you can wire up a lambda external lambda control unit to it. Right? Once you wire it up, depending what fuel ratio system you're using, like we use a Innovate, so we use Innovate. So you can allow instant compensations. So what it's going to do, you're going to wire your fuel ratio to the software, and then obviously an external gauge on your dash. You can see exactly what fuel ratio that you're sitting at, right? And now you can enable. I see they added this. You can allow instant compensations. See, as 35%. So this is probably telling us how much it's correct. It's either taking away 35% or adding 35%. Now, fuel economy mode, you can set an air fuel ratio set point. So you can say you want it to be at 14:1 or 14.7:1, which is a lambda reading of 1.0. You can obviously choose your loop speed at 3 milliseconds, 5 milliseconds, etc. And then you got your enrichment gain. That's the percentage of fuel that it's adding. Or you can say enlightenment gain, percentage of fuel that you want it to take away. And then obviously you got your max RPM where you want it to work. So you can ask it to be from 1000 RPM to 2000 RPM, or you can take it up right up to 6000 RPM. And then max map, this is basically would be for boost, I would presume. Alright, idle corrections, enable lambda corrections at idle. We can tick that if it's hooked up, and that's going to assist you there. Alright, so I think we've got the hang of this. So next one, we're going to say fuel enrichment pot. It's basically to try and get more out of our injector. Right? We don't really use this, so if you're using this, obviously, which means your injectors are most likely going to be on the small side, and you need to look into that. Ignition offset pot. Same here, I think ignition offset pot. So this is basically how many degrees of timing take away on your pot. You can either take away -4 degrees or -8 degrees. Right, so I think we went through all the GPO functions there. Have we covered all? Yes, we did. I'm going to switch to outputs. So outputs, we call it inputs. Remember, I said is GPI, general purpose input. Outputs will be called general purpose outputs, which is GPO. So same like the inputs on the software side, it will tell you what each wire is for, which GPO. It's either GPO 1, 2, and 3. So GPO 1, you can either use, let's start from the beginning, you can switch on your radiator fan. We are running this on one of our turbo setups. So we can switch the fan on at, let's just say 85 degrees, and we can switch the fan off at 80 or 82. We can basically control the fan when to switch on and off. I really like this feature. It's very, very good one. So it's advanced settings on, water temp, force fans on if map boost exceeds. This is a good one. So if you overboost to a specific boost, let's just say you're supposed to boost at 1.5 bar and the car went to 1.7 bar. So we're going to say if it goes to 1.6 bar, turn the fans on. So So it's just going to obviously try and pull the car in that moment. Minimum hold time seconds, you don't really need to dig too deep into that one right now. Yeah, that's for radiator fans. The next one we're going to say variable boost control. Okay, so it's giving us a warning. GPO 1 and idle control share a common PWM frequency and cannot be used at the same time. Idle requires 141 Hz to 282 Hz, while boost valves require 35 Hz. Rather use GPO 2 or 3 for boost control if idle control is required. So important there what they're saying to us. If idle is not used, then change GPO 1 frequency to 35 Hz and it will work fine. Okay, so thank you for that. How do we get rid of that? Let's just go back. Where were we? Yeah. Let's just use it under GPO 2. Change that. Go back to this control. Thank you. Okay. So yeah, variable boost control. So you can, browse through this, go through all these settings. There's some nice features there that's obviously going to help you to control your boost. I really like the way they designed this software and this management. It's very user friendly once you get the hang of things and how these things work. At first, it might look a bit intimidating and confusing, but trust me, it's not. As long as you know you have some sort of knowledge on tuning softwares and management softwares, you'll basically understand the broad overview of what's happening. Okay, so let's see, block is coming. I'm going to change to VTech. You can obviously control VTech here as well. Same like boost. You can look at your RPM range, minimum TPS for it to come on, or maximum boost pressure for it to come on. Wire is connected to both cams, intake cam only, exhaust cam. So you got to do the setup here as well. So very important when you do that. And if it is active, it will tell you active up here. Right, so that's for VTech and VBR control. Intake manifold flaps, you can control that as well. Similar like the last ones we just done. So fly, straightforward. You can, as I say, you got 3 functions there, so you got to choose wisely what sort of setup and what you want to use it for. So shift flight, you would control it from here. You can set your RPM, and obviously it starts coming on at that specific RPM. This is a cool one. So we have engine warning lights, engine warning light OBD. I haven't used this, but I would want to in the near future. So you can basically show OBD error code, OBD setup. There you go, right? So if you wire up the warning light to the management, right? You set it up here on your GPO, and then you say you can either disable, only save OBD warning light inputs on solid. So you can tell. So for example, now we are on rev limiter hit. Let's look at something else. Let's look at water temperature error, right? So down here, okay, let's go to battery voltage. So if we take battery voltage and we go to that drop down, so if battery voltage goes too low or too high, right, we can tell the ECU to put the warning light on, the one that we wired up with the LED, to either turn it on solid, make it flash slowly, or flash fast. So we're going to say turn on solid. So what's going to happen is if our battery voltage goes too low or too high, it's going to turn our warning light on solid. And same with TPS. Now if we say TPS, if we have an issue with TPS, we want it to flash fast. So if we have an error with the TPS, it's going to flash fast. If water temperature, let's just say it stopped working or it reads incorrect or whatever reason, we'll say we want it to flash slowly. So what's going to happen is if these things pick up an error, it's going to put the warning light on and flash based on the settings that we put here. It's going to tell us, or if we do remember what it's set to, there's an issue. Obviously, we've got to log in and we've got to dig deeper and see what's going on there with it. So that's a cool feature here. I see there's some other settings down here, but it's obviously it's highlighted in gray, so we can't get to it. I'm not 100% sure why. But as I said to you, I know the designers of this management are always improving and adding more and more stuff to it as time goes on. So that's really, really interesting. So nitrous control, same like VVT, VTEC, all those kind of things. Water injection, same thing. The option is there. Then you got, that's a nice one. I see I'm sure this was added recently. So you got a secondary fuel pump that you now can control it with minimum TPS. This will probably be when you want it to come on, or minimum boost when you want it to come on, minimum throttle position as to when you want the secondary pump to kick in. And yeah, minimum sustainable time, so you can set the time or the duration that you want it to obviously kick in or kick out. So that's cool. I haven't seen this before. I haven't really looked, but I never noticed this option. So I think it's something recently that's added there. So RPM based switch. Let's have a look at what this is. RPM based switch. Output polarity, RPM. Okay, so I'm not 100% sure what was this. I can't clearly remember. We need to plug it into the car and see what it does. Map sensor. Then you got TPS sensor, base switch, water temp switch, air temperature, battery voltage switch. Let's just click this. Okay, so a lot of other valuable information here. So idle control output, you can obviously control it on this setup. So click in here. There's obviously like some presets that's already added into the system on different types of cars. So you might use one of them that's already existing here, and it might obviously get you close to where you need to be. So if you're still not where you need it to be, you can obviously still adjust it by using the up and down arrows and the left and right to adjust the values to get it to the desired RPM that you need. Okay, so coil adjuster, reset the noise. So I'm not going to dig too deep into that. Then you got fuel pump output. This is how long the fuel pump comes on from the time the management switched on. So if you say 5 seconds, as soon as you turn the ignition on, the fuel pump is going to come on. You'll hear it coming on for about 5 seconds, and then after that it will switch off. We normally keep them around 5, somewhere around there, depending on the car and the setup as well. And then tacho, so obviously color is blue and gray on the wiring. So once that's hooked up, then you can obviously choose the type of either a rev counter signal or a signal pass through. Sorry, a trigger signal pass through. And then the rev counter should work. That's pretty much straightforward. So we covered fuel map 1, fuel map 2, ignition maps. We're going to run through this shortly because I've loaded my map into this car. We've done outputs. We've done frequency. We've done inputs. We've done compensation. We went through main setup. We went through sensor setup. We went through the help page, data page, and file options we've done. And the last and most important one for me is this one. So the reason why I'm bringing you to the data login page last is because this is where it's going to help you the most. So once you got everything set up and working the way it should, this page is going to assist you guys with seeing exactly what the car is doing. So if you look down here at the bottom, I got RPM, I got TPS, that's duty percentage, water, battery voltage, map sensor, fuel, ignition, air temperature, idle percentage, throttle pump addition, air fuel value. So that's the important one. So what you do is, if you want to see if the car is doing some funny things, or if you want to just make sure everything's working the way it should work, you come to your data page, you say start log, it's gonna turn up this page. Obviously it's not coming live now because we are on offline mode. It's gonna tell you exactly what the car is doing. You're gonna see the RPM, the numbers are a little bit all messed up. Let's just say we're at 900, it'll be up here somewhere, going up and down like this here, idling. You're gonna see your TPS. TPS will probably be at 0, which will be down there. You're going to see your fuel in milliseconds. How much of fuel, let's just say it's like 1 millisecond up there. Obviously, the graph looks a little bit different. I'll try and see if I can load a previous log to show you what it's doing. I think let me do that. So, yeah, I'll show you what a log looks like. So, on this log, okay, let me get the log going and then we'll come back to this. Just give me a moment. I'll be right back. Okay, so we are back here. Sorry about that, guys. I just needed to get that file so I can show you this information better. Because this page is one of the most important pages that you're going to need to understand how it works on the Sustech software or interface. So I'm going to load a file here. Right. So this is what it's going to look at. So if you start recording, this is what it's going to do. It's going to give us all this information here. Right. Now, to zoom it, we obviously grab from the top. Let me bring it down. I just want to make that a bit better here. I just want to go a little bit more. Okay, let's go backwards. Sorry. I want to look at this section here. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to take you to that section first. So this was one of the drag events that I faced with my car. So this was what was happening. This was my burnout. So you can see here, if you unclick, that's the amount of fuel that's being added into the system. This was my throttle, a little bluish purplish line, and this is my RPM that's in red there. Right here, you'll be able to see your duty percentage, how hard the injectors are working. You can see my water temperature is right there. Right, so that's for water temperature, and this is battery voltage. I just want to show you something about battery voltage a little bit later on in this section. Right, we're going to untick some of this that we're not going to be really needing. We're going to unclick air, idle percentage, and we're going to unclick air fuel ratio. Reason being was it was not obviously wired up at that time, but what will happen, you can see air fuel ratio is up there, the light that's going off and on, that's here. So if you got air fuel ratio, remember I said if you got your controller wired up to the management, it's going to tell you exactly what sort of air fuel ratio you're sitting at each RPM. So it'll tell if you are running a bit lean, you would know which section in your fuel map to basically fix. So without that, it's difficult to tune or look at if the car is doing what it should do. Because remember, you might get it tuned on the dyno, and you go to the drag strip, and if there's some changes in the car that you may not know about, you're going to basically see it straight away once you look at your data log that you pull off the system. So I'm just unticking all this. Reason being is I'm going to leave throttle pump because that comes in. Let's check ignition. We're going to leave fuel, TPS, duty percentage. We leave that on. RPM we're going to leave. So this was just my burnout. So you can see when I was doing a burnout, I was about 70%. There was about 90% RPM. Doing the burnout, I did a couple of warm-ups there. So I'm going to take it back a bit, and then I'm going to go through that run. So it's a bit congested there. I'm going to take some of this out to show you exactly what it's doing, what it was doing. unclick that. We're gonna leave battery on, RPM, TPS, throttle pump, and take it out. So yeah, what is happening on my specific car, and this is where we picked up this issue. We were dropping battery voltage. So you see the little y-axis here. This is basically 10, 11, 12, 12.5 volts, somewhere around there. 13 rather. About 13, close to 14 volts. As you see, I was into my run. Let's zoom it up a little bit more. Right. So this was first gear. You can see my TPS here. First gear, second gear. That was my third gear, and that was my fourth gear. And that is my RPM on each gear. You can see we were revving to, at peak RPM we were about 8,200, 8,200. First gear, you can see wasted gear, couldn't get the power down. So first gear we was literally floating about 50-60% RPM. We couldn't get into it. The interesting thing about it was also, if you understand how this works, you'll be able to see a lot of wheel spin where you're having traction issues. And yeah, we learned how to figure this out, so we know how to read where there's wheel spin and where there's not. Yeah, so very interesting thing. I'm not going to go into the nuts and bolts of it, but yeah, you guys can play around and try and understand this better. So here, what we picked up was, you can see as we went into the run into the second gear, we started dropping voltage. We almost went to like 11, 12 volts. It was almost 12, it was 11 point something. It was almost at battery power. And this was where our alternator has failed us in the drag. And then we continued to race with no alternator after that. We had to obviously change some of the fuel pressure to compensate for the lack in battery voltage. So if we didn't have this data log and we couldn't look at it, we would have never picked up that we were losing voltage at high RPM. So that was a cool thing about it. That's just to look at logs and how to understand logs, right? So remember, this is your y-axis, x-axis. This is just basically your timeline. So 125, this is in seconds. And this here is as in a percentage. So 10, 20, 30, 40. So you look at that is 7,000 RPM, the red dot, 7,000, 8,000, and so on. So if you want to look at the fuel in milliseconds, we untick everything, we just leave RPM. You can see the amount of milliseconds. This was 7.5 around there. And the reason why you see these spikes here is because, remember I spoke to you guys about throttle pump. That's what it does in between gearing as well. So yeah, cool thing to understand. I want to show you one more data log. This was just a drag event. I want to show you one more where we picked up another issue on another car. I'm going to click that one. So yeah, so this was another Toyota that we dealt with. So you see the little red spikes here. This is the actual RPM. It was jumping to 12,000 basically RPM while the customer was driving the car. So it was doing it intermittently. It's having RPM spikes without pressing the accelerator. We obviously know the car doesn't rev to that RPM, so it's telling us it's an issue. So we had to obviously dig deeper and see why is this vehicle behaving in such manner. So you can see at flat foot at 100% RPM, 100% TPS, our RPM was jumping to 12,000 or somewhere around there. And that's on a few sections of the log. So what is happening with this specific car? We had interference issue. So we've got that sorted out and yeah, corrected. Now when you see this happening, you have RPM jumps like this. What it's telling you is that there is noise. Noise is interference, where it's interfering with your signal that's coming from your crank or your distributor. So when you have this issue here with Sustech, like I mentioned to you guys earlier, we'll come back to it. obviously telling you there's an underlying issue there that you need to attend to and deal with. All right, but you need to look deeper into it as to why it's doing that. If it's doing this, you got to look at where noise is coming from, but they also give you the option of adjusting the voltage. So you see here, I spoke to you guys earlier. I said it's 031 at by default. If you increase the voltage, this block is a little bit highlighted because I loaded my Mac there now. Let me just close this and reopen it. Okay, so we open up again. We're gonna go to file options. Let's say work offline. Offline. Right, so we're gonna go back here now. You see that little block is back here, right? By default, it'll be 031, somewhere around there. Now, to try and assist, they added this section in to help with interference, but it's not to fix your problem. It's just to get you going, but you need to obviously find, dig into the wiring and see where's the noise coming from. It could be coils, it could be injectors, it could be alternator, starter, anything that can create magnetic fields. So what you got to do is you got to find that issue, but to try and curb that and assist us with that, they added a voltage compensation here. So the higher you increase this, it will try and assist by reducing the noise. But if you go too high with it, it'll take away the noise in most cases, but it won't allow you to start the car. The car won't fire up. So if you switch it off, you might see now when you got the car idling and you do this, you pick up the voltage here, you rub it, the car is now clean. But then the moment you switch it off and you try to start again, it won't start. So it has an inverse reaction to whatever you do to this. So you can click that to reduce voltage just for cranking, but still if it doesn't assist, then obviously you're going beyond the point. You got to find the sweet spot where it's going to take away most of the noise but still allow you to crank the vehicle. So just to recap on this, the higher you go, it's going to take away noise, but it might not start the car. So you got to find the sweet spot. So yeah, that's data logging and how to use this section. Fuel maps, we went through that. Fuel table. So yeah, I think we basically ran through all the important things. So if you guys are still not sure about anything, or if you need information, you're welcome to drop us a message, get into the comments. I know this video was a little bit of a lengthy one, but yeah, it's just for most of the guys out there that needed some information on the software. I haven't shared all the information with you guys. I shared most of the stuff that I know about and what we've learned about. So yeah, if you're unsure about something, get in the comments, talk to us, or you can also talk to Sustech directly. They're always very willing to help us. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope it was informative, and I hope it helps somebody out there. And we will try and get a live tuning video of this management on the car soon. I think we have a R32 that's in the shop we're busy with. So maybe if I do have some time, I will try and upload that in the next few days. So yeah, we'll catch you guys on the next one. Just a reminder, if you haven't liked and follow our channel as yet, please do so. We'd really appreciate that. We're trying to grow this channel. So yeah, enjoy guys and take care. We'll see you guys on the next one.